say 3 years prison term given former President Hosni Mubarak is appropriate for the corruption charges leveled against him?
I mean, I'm not a judge. I'm not going to judge Mr. Mubarak. But there were so many things went wrong under President Mubarak. I would have thought not just him, but like the entire circle of Mr. Mubarak would have been at least gone under some sort of scrutiny and actually reducing down to all these crimes for many years under Mr. Mubarak to one crime, which is like renovating his own property, is really undermining the crimes committed, and it's not doing justice to the people who suffered under Mubarak regime. It's not really, put it mildly, a proper judiciary. This is.
Okay, but I'm still going to go back to that question, basically. Now, Mr. Mubarak has already served some time behind bars in the course of this trial. Now, could that partly account for the current 3-year sentence?
I think legally it should, because he's already been, he lost his freedom, so that should be counted. I think in any country that will be counted.
Now, were you surprised?
So he will, he's effectively go free now.
Okay. Well, were you surprised at the level of this sentence?
I'm surprised at the low level of the sentence, of course, and I'm also surprised by the crime, because you know, like diverting money to his own property is like trivializing the crimes committed under President Mubarak. Maybe it's not appropriate to sentence everybody, but there should have been, as I said before, some sort of truth and reconciliation committee in order for these people to come forward and justify the crimes they committed, and then maybe we would have had a more stable Egypt. But now all these officials, all these military men, all these party officials were part of the crime committed under Mubarak, and all that is down to 3 of them, Mubarak himself and his sons, and the crimes have been reduced not against the people but only corruption. So how about all these people tortured? Don't they should get their rights? It's surprising.
Now, talking about the members of the former president's cabinet and now the family members. Now, the former president's sons got 4-year sentence as well. What does this say of family members' involvement in public spending of state funds in Egypt's politics?
Well, nepotism, that's not really unusual in North Africa and Middle East, but of course that itself is crime. The fact that President Mubarak brought his sons, and everybody were expecting that probably Jamal would replace him after he would leave his post, whenever that was. This is in itself is a crime. A party official or a government official should not facilitate to bring his sons or members of his family into the ruling circle. I mean, this is a crime in itself, nepotism. The crime is not that his sons involved in corruption. Maybe that's a crime too, but the crime is that President Mubarak brought his families into a ruling circle, and that's a crime itself, but nobody been punished for that.
Now, you mentioned the fact that family members do get involved in the Egyptian politics of, you know, spending state funds. Now, why is that a norm?
It is because they can't get away, because there is no a democratic structure or a civil structure to the government, to the authority, not to the government, to the state. And then somebody goes to the top of the circle and rules, and he gets away with everything. He has some sort of probably mutual agreement with the military to rule the way he wanted, and he always had militaries ruling, but we don't see the military generals get any sentences. It's only Mubarak and his sons, and the sentences are really very mild.
Now, obviously, we're going to be having a lot of public perception over this. In your own view, what is likely to be the Egyptian public perception on this ruling? I mean, there are citizens who still support the former president despite his ordeal.
I think President Mubarak is now becoming irrelevant. What's a problem for the Sisi's government is mainly civil activists and also members of the Muslim Brotherhood. I think probably that's why the sentence is so mild. Maybe they want to get, at least to get rid of that issue, and maybe they free their hands to deal with the current situation, current political situation, and also security situation, which is mainly they blame Muslim Brotherhood, but of course the civil activists are also part of that.
Now, what is the major implication of this ruling on the Egyptian politics for some time to come now? A former president has been sentenced.
A former president, I guess you mean Mubarak, or
exactly,
or Morsi, because
Mubarak.
Mubarak. Okay,
yeah.
let us start with Mubarak.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, Mubarak. Sentencing Mubarak doesn't really help Sisi, because Mubarak was in the military circle and Sisi is also from the same circle. So if now we are saying that Mubarak committed crimes against people and abused his power, so maybe the lesson to learn from that is not to go through that route, not to have another military general as the head of the executive power. Of course, Sisi has more power than just the head of the executive power now. Maybe that's what the lesson we should learn. But what we see now, one of the military generals again became the head of the state. He's the head of the state. He's the head of government, but he acts as the head of the state. And maybe that's the lesson that should be taken. But it seems to me that Egypt has not learned from that lesson.
Okay, now are the Egyptians themselves, will they have more confidence in their country's judiciary with this sentencing?
I don't believe so. I think the Egyptian judiciary, sadly, first lost its international reputation, because if I take one example, there's one judge who has passed 180 death sentences. Either Egyptian society are deeply involved in crimes, heavy crimes, or there's something wrong with the judiciary, and the wrong with the judiciary is that the judiciary is politically driven to sentence individuals who are accused of standing against Sisi's government, and that doesn't help. And let us not forget, in Egypt you don't have parliament yet, so Sisi acts as the head of the state, and whatever he says is a decree, or he is effectively replaced the judiciary power. He also acts as a government executive power and the parliament, and that's not really right. The best he can do, he can act as the head of the caretaking government until the parliament is in session. But we know there was a lot of problem with election parliament, and we don't know when the next parliament will be sit. I don't know. I mean, we still don't have a parliament. So to cut it short, I think the judiciary, on one side, on one hand, you can argue really hasn't got power to sentence people, because we don't have a parliament to oversee the judiciary, because the judiciary only implements the law, and after the revolution we don't have law, because the constitution changed. Once the constitution changed, the entire penal code and other codes in the country should change. That hasn't happened. And how come we still sentence people by a law which is legislated under the previous constitution? I think there's a serious technical problem here.
All right, Rebwar Fatah, Director of Middle East Consultancy Service, thanks very much for your input on the Mubarak sentencing.